Hey guys, it's KJ from the Scariest Movie Ever channel on YouTube, and I have a video here for you I put together because I actually discussed some of this subject on a recent podcast, and right after that I had many people asking me more questions. And ultimately what I'm going to show you here today is an example of a public Illuminati ritual, if you will, okay? Many of us understand that this world, everything, media, politics, all this stuff is run not by the people we see on TV all the time, but by secret societies. There are people behind the curtain, right? In every element of everything in our world. We've all been bathed in lies. We've been bathed in deception since we were born into this. Now, at the same time, we're living in a moment of our history where all these things are being revealed. This has been happening for the last few years, and it's intensifying. You literally have light forces and dark forces working against each other and working alongside each other, trying to reveal all these things that need to be revealed, all these secrets, all this occult knowledge. I've covered this subject in the past in other videos, and the subject is the public rituals, public Illuminati or Freemason rituals. These things that are hidden right before our very eyes. Now, I haven't covered one of these in a while because I hadn't really seen one. And then we had the Paris attacks on Friday the 13th. So as I started kind of looking through that a little bit, I started finding some other connections. So this video is not so much about the Paris attacks themselves. It's about a lot of things that have happened around those attacks and on that same day, Friday the 13th. Because remember that what we're dealing with here is occult. It's hidden. This is hidden before our very eyes. And as I said, there is a mass awakening taking place right now. So there are good forces that are trying to reveal this information to give knowledge to others, so others can see what's really going on, can really understand the wickedness that runs this world. And then there's darker forces that are putting forth the same information but with their spin on it. They're trying to promote this as, again, the New World Order will be a good thing. A one-world religion will be a good thing. This coming one-world leader, who many believe is the Antichrist, will be a good thing. So before I get into the video and show you these things that I found, I want to cover some of the basics just so you understand. You may be new to some of this kind of information, so it's very important for me to point out once again some of the basics with the things we're going to cover here. Freemasonry is one of the oldest organizations that's still in existence today. Papyrus scrolls that were found in 1888 in excavations in the Libyan desert describe secret meetings of similar groups from 2000 BC. So these brotherhoods had already been involved in the building of the Temple of Solomon and had fulfilled then their functions similar to today's unions. At the same time, they have these mystical traditions. So we're told that the objective of Masonry is given as this inner transformation through spiritual perfection in reverence to God, G-O-D. Now, since Freemasons belong to different religions, they call this God the Great Builder of all worlds, or the Great Architect. Further references are found in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and this god, Thoth, who had been their Grand Master, is the usual title for the highest leaders. The spiritual knowledge of the Freemasons had been replaced by symbols, allegories, and rituals, which served as kind of a communication for them. So once again, this goes back to what I was telling you about the hidden symbols, the language of symbols, right? This is what they use and have been using for a very, very long time. But we're living at a time now, like I said, where all this stuff is being revealed for all to see. So their secret language was symbols. It's the Masonic ritual handshake even, the pyramid, the pentagram, the use of the numbers 3, 7, 13, and 33 in coats of arms. These are emblems that they use, and today in many company logos and names we see the same thing, right? And that's certainly not a coincidence. So it's very interesting that we find many of these common emblems or symbols with the Masons that again extend back, centuries. We find a lot of these things nowadays in corporate logos, right? Corporate names. So again, this is just another example showing you, that these secret societies, right, are truly behind our reality or our perceived reality. These are the controllers. And speaking of Thoth and the Egyptian gods, once again, this is how they put it right out there, right before your very eyes. But there's a new movie coming out here real soon called The Gods of Egypt. And of course, it's going to have all the gods of Egypt. There's Horus right there, right? So this is the way that we, the public, the dumbed down in many ways or blind, spiritually blind public to this stuff, this is how we're indoctrinated to a lot of these ideas and a lot of these mystery religions. Now, right now, the whole world has their eyes on Paris, and they should. Paris just suffered a horrible attack last Friday. That's Friday the 13th. And like I said, this video is not even so much about the attacks themselves, because I haven't even fully looked into all of that yet. Typically, with any kind of an attack like this, that comes out, they're always very questionable to me. I don't know, how much of this stuff is real, how much was set up. What I've seen from the images, though, from Paris, it certainly looks like there was real devastation, and obviously people really died. But still, that's not to say that this wasn't arranged, or that it wasn't somehow coordinated to happen. And that's a hard pill to swallow. That's where we're talking about false flags, where we have government groups or these hidden societies, these secret societies, the secret government, right, that would actually let something like this happen or set it up for this to happen so that people would actually get hurt. But ultimately, what these occultists want is a one world order, a one world system, and they create order out of chaos. So this is why we see so much of this stuff happening, right? Seems like every other week or every week there's a new shooting somewhere in America, or stabbing in China, or terrorist plot over here, right? There's always something happening. So this beast system tries to keep us in a perpetual state of fear, right? Because it's easier to control people through fear. But anyway, before I move on, I just wanted to talk a little bit about ISIS itself. The US and British regional military intelligence groups, they have been empowering and even directly sponsoring a lot of these Islamist militants in Iraq, Syria, and beyond. Now, many of those groups went on to break away from Al-Qaeda and from ISIS, the Islamic State, right, of Iraq and Syria, or now simply the Islamic State. That's what they're calling them now, or ISIL, right? They keep changing the name all the time. But since 2003, Anglo-American power has secretly and openly coordinated direct and indirect support for Islamist terrorist groups that were linked to Al-Qaeda across the Middle East and even in North Africa. So this ill-conceived patchwork geostrategy, as they call it, is a legacy of the persistent influence of neoconservative ideology. It's all motivated by long-standing but often contradictory ambitions to dominate regional oil resources. It always seems to go back to oil. So early during the 2003 invasion and occupation of Iraq, the U.S. was covertly supplying arms to Al-Qaeda. And that's come out, right? That's been out. Pakistani defense sources interviewed by Asia Times back in 2005 confirmed that insurgents described as former Ba'ath Party loyalists who were being recruited and trained by Al-Qaeda in Iraq under the leadership of the late Abu Musab Zarqawi were being supplied Pakistan-manufactured weapons by the U.S. So the arms shipments, including rifles, rocket-propelled grenade launchers, ammunition, rockets, and other light weaponry, all those arms, they could not be destined for the Iraqi security forces because U.S. arms would be given to them. There's a great quote by General Martin Dempsey. He's the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, and a few months ago he told the Pentagon that ISIS is an organization that has an apocalyptic, end-of-days strategic vision which will eventually have to be defeated. It's absolutely spot on. And once again, I don't know what level General Martin Dempsey is in on all this or not either. I mean, I really can't trust any official source out of the White House or anywhere else for that matter. It's just the way it is, right? And I wouldn't suggest you do it either. Everything they say, everything that comes out of their mouths in the mainstream, we have to scrutinize, right? But in many respects, that quote is spot on, because ISIS has been up to some really weird stuff. So have you ever heard of the short story by Stephen King called The Langille Ears? They even made a movie out of it. It's about a bunch of people on a plane that go through some kind of a time warp, and it puts them behind time just a little bit. but it puts them back in time just enough to see what happens to old memories or old time as it moves on. And turns out, in the story of the Langille Ears, everything is eaten away, everything is destroyed. So these Langille Ears are like almost these evil Pac-Men. They're just basically huge mouths and teeth that sweep through and eat everything. They eat reality away, everything. And in a sense, ISIS seems to be doing the exact same thing with a lot of our archaeology, a lot of our hidden history even. So in a very real sense, ISIS itself is being used in a very similar way. It seems to be eating away a lot of our ancient history, a lot of our archaeology. It's very interesting, the sites that they're destroying. What you're looking at here is the Temple of Baal Shaman. And a while back, allegedly ISIS, right, they released a video that shocked the world showing the fiery destruction of this temple. And it's one of the best preserved ruins at the Syrian site of Palmyra. Around the same time, there were explosions reported at yet another Palmyra temple. This one was very interesting because it turns out that ISIS had actually also destroyed a temple in Palmyra that was dedicated to the ancient god Baal. All this destruction is part of a propaganda campaign, it seems, that includes videos of militants rampaging through Iraq's Mosul Museum with pickaxes and sledgehammers and literally putting dynamite to centuries-old Christian and Muslim shrines. The group actually released some photos of the militants rigging the 1900-year-old Temple of Baal Shaman with explosives and actually blowing it up. It was one of Palmyra's best preserved buildings, originally dedicated to a Phoenician storm god, right? And now it's nothing but rubble. ISIS also destroyed the Mar Elian monastery. It was the Christian monastery was captured a while back when ISIS militants captured the Syrian town of Al-Qiratain near Palmyra. It was dedicated to a 4th century saint, and it was an important pilgrimage site and sheltered hundreds of Syrian Christians. But bulldozers from ISIS were reportedly used to topple its walls, and of course ISIS then posted pictures of the destruction all over Twitter. Apamea was a Roman-era trading city and had been badly looted since the beginning of Syria's civil war before ISIS even appeared. And previously unknown Roman mosaics had reportedly been excavated and removed for sale. So ISIS is said to take a cut from sales of these ancient artifacts, making tens of millions of dollars to continue funding their operations. Now there's also a Greek settlement on the Euphrates not far from Syria's border with Iraq called Dura Europos, and it later became one of Rome's easternmost outposts. It housed the world's oldest known Christian church. It was a beautifully decorated synagogue and many other temples and Roman-era buildings. Now satellite imagery shows a cratered landscape inside the city's mud brick walls, more evidence of widespread destruction by ISIS. Mari is yet another area that's being looted by ISIS. It's flourished in the Bronze Age between 3000 and 1600 BC. Archaeologists had discovered palaces, temples, and extensive archives written on clay tablets that shed a lot of light on the early days of civilization in that region. But of course now, according to reports from locals and even satellite imagery once again, they can see now that the site, and especially the royal palace, has been completely destroyed and looted. Built in the 3rd century BC, Hatra was the capital of an independent kingdom on the outskirts of the Roman Empire. Its combination of Greek and Roman-influenced architecture and Eastern features testify to its prominence as a trading center on the Silk Road. Hatra was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site back in 1985, but in 2014 Hatra was taken over by ISIS and reportedly used as an ammo dump and training camp. A video released by ISIS in April of 2015 showed fighters using sledgehammers and automatic weapons to destroy all the sculptures in several of the site's largest buildings. The destruction of Hatra marks a turning point in the appalling strategy of cultural cleansing underway in Iraq, said UNESCO head Irina Bokova at the time. Ancient Assyria was one of the first true empires. It expanded aggressively across the Middle East, and it controlled a vast stretch of the ancient world between 900 and 600 BC. So the Assyrian kings ruled their realm from a series of capitals in what is today northern Iraq. Nineveh, which is what you see right here, was one of them. It flourished under the Assyrian Emperor Sennacherib around 700 BC, and at one point Nineveh was considered the largest city in the entire world. Its location on the outskirts of Mosul put it in ISIS's crosshairs when the group took over the city in 2014. Many of the site's sculptures were housed in the Mosul Museum, and some were damaged during the rampage through the museum. It was all documented in videos that, once again, ISIS releases. So men were also shown smashing these half-human, half-animal guardian statues called Lamassus on Nineveh's ancient Nergal Gate. I found that really interesting. Once again, I've covered the history of the fallen angels in a lot of my videos. I'm very interested in that subject itself. So right here we see these guys are literally destroying these landmarks of the fallen angels. It's interesting. And speaking of ISIS destroying these relics of the fallen ones, Nimrud is a perfect example. Nimrud was the first Assyrian capital. It was founded 3,200 years ago. Its rich decoration reflected the empire's power and wealth. The site was excavated beginning in the 1840s by British archaeologists, who had sent dozens of its massive stone sculptures to museums all around the world, including New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art and the British Museum in London. And many of the originals remained in Iraq, which is unfortunate because ISIS got a hold of it. So the site itself is massive. Its wall surrounds 890 acres. The Iraqi Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities said that ISIS bulldozed parts of that site, but the extent of the damage still isn't exactly clear. Some of the city was never uncovered, however, and many of the remains underground were still protected, one may hope. And again, speaking of the fallen angels and their relics, we have Khorsabad, which is yet another ancient Assyrian capital. It's a few miles from Mosul, and the palace there was built between 717 and 706 BC by Assyria's then king Sargon II. So its reliefs and statues were remarkably well preserved. Traces of the original paint even still decorating many of these depictions of these Assyrian victories and royal processions. Most of the reliefs and many of the statues were removed during French excavations in the mid-1800s and by teams from Chicago's Oriental Institute in the 1920s and 30s. And most of them are now in Iraq Museum, which is in Baghdad, as well as in Chicago and the Louvre in Paris. So at this point, the only information that anybody really has on what's missing and what's been destroyed has been coming from the local people out there and the Iraqi Antiquities Ministry. But there has been damage and there has been theft, and all of it has been attributed once again to ISIS. Now that's just a handful of the places that ISIS has allegedly been destroying and stealing from and everything else. And there's more. There's more, and it's still happening now. But I just wanted to cover those right there in particular, and also show you again that connection to them destroying this history of the fallen ones. And them destroying history in general. To me, it's not exactly just about the areas they're hitting. It's the whole idea. It's the whole purpose of destroying history. So I find this very interesting. Spiritually speaking, looking at it through kind of spiritual eyes, if we truly are entering the end times, if we truly are close to the end of time, it would almost make sense that there would be this Langille Ear type group, if you will, out there that's literally eating up history behind us as we approach the end. As for public ritual, as for coding, the kind of coding that we find in a lot of these things, the number 33 showed up a lot on Friday the 13th around these attacks. Well, for one, the movie The 33 actually opened on that day, and again that had to do with the Chilean miners. In that movie, the Phoenix, the Phoenix, the Phoenix rose the 33 to the surface from underground. The Phoenix was a crane. I'll cover more of that in a little bit. The Paris shooting that took place on Friday the 13th was 311 days after the Charlie Hebdo shootings. You may remember those. So 311, of course, 3 times 11, we have the 33 again. And at least one of those shootings took place in the 11th district, which was interesting. And even the code to call the police out in France is 33. So I thought that was interesting as well. So aside from the esoteric or the occult, I don't find any direct connections between the movie 33 or the ritual of the 33 Chilean miners with this attack on Friday the 13th, other than some of the numbers lining up the way they do. Once again, we keep finding these 33s. And as I said, I've covered this subject in other videos in the past, and you'll find that. It's the gematria, it's the numerology. You'll find all these numbers lining up on these certain ritual dates. So we get these clues, we get these hints, right? And this is how we connect our dots. And I do see a connection in all of this occult ritual, because once again, everything is being run from behind the scenes, from shadow groups or secret societies. And these people are witches, they are warlocks in many respects. They are literally using magic, they're using witchcraft. And not in a good way, if there is a good way to use that stuff, okay? People want to argue that point sometimes. Now this is bad energy, bad magic these people are up to. That's Antonio Banderas, he's one of the actors from the movie, but you can even see him doing the whole hand over the heart type thing, and that's also a very, very common Freemason symbol. It's called the lion's paw. So again, it's the lion's paw. Other people have called it the devil's claw. But it's the lion's paw. There's different terms for it, but once again, this is a very common symbol or motion, if you will, with the Freemasons. I mean, even the Pope himself isn't beyond having to partake in ritual, or having to partake in these different symbols and handshakes and gestures. All these people involved with this beast system, it's what they gotta do. So going back to the 33, first thing you want to look at is the company logo itself. So as the rescue was unfolding, most TV viewers or watching failed to understand the obvious Masonic symbolism or even statements that were aired all around the globe on all the major networks about this whole ritual. The company responsible for the mining disaster in Chile is called Codelco. It's the largest copper producing company in the world, and Codelco's corporate logo is the Egyptian all-seeing eye, which also of course appears on the American $1 bill. The name is Codelco. The BBC's James Reed remarked that the number 33 had taken on a very special significance for the miners, who were known to be very superstitious. Roman Catholic Chileans believe Jesus Christ was 33 when he died, so there are 33 miners, right? And it took 33 days for the drill to complete the rescue shaft. So the date of the Chilean miners' rescue was 13/10/10, which adds up to, that's right, 33. In his triumphant speech after the first miner emerged from the shaft, Chile's President Sebastián Pinera mentioned the magic number 33. He even said the magic number 33. And the magic number in Freemasonry is the number 33. And then of course in Freemasonry they call 33 the magic number as well, because that's when the initiate has met his full enlightenment. So the miners were actually brought up to the surface with a rescue pod or a capsule, and that capsule was given the name Phoenix, as you can see right here, spelled F-E-N-I-X. Now the Phoenix bird is a massive symbol of the Illuminati, if you will, the secret societies. But it's also a massive symbol to many for Lucifer itself. Barbara Walker, in her occult book called Now is the Dawning, wrote that the Egyptians believed that the phoenix was the representative of a god who rose to heaven in the form of a morning star, like Lucifer, after his fire immolation of death and rebirth. So within the realm of occult, the phoenix is the legendary bird of the Egyptian satanic mystery religions. Manly P. Hall himself, 33rd degree Mason, stated that the phoenix resembles an eagle, and at its death, its body opens and the newborn phoenix emerges, resurrected anew. So maybe now it makes more sense to you why we're constantly seeing the phoenix, right? We're constantly seeing the phoenix. We're seeing it at Super Bowls, we're seeing it at awards shows, we're seeing it all over the place, but the phoenix is constantly being represented through this beast system. In the entertainment realms, where oftentimes we're seeing the phoenix. Connects back to some other videos I did in the past, and this is Conchita Wurst, the Eurovision winner, singer they had just a few years back. And of course her song was Rise of the Phoenix, the song that made her famous, well known, right, worldwide. It was Rise of the Phoenix. So again, when understanding this beast system, because this is what it is. This is a system that's sole purpose at this point is to lead us into a one world system, a one world religion, one world monetary system, and of course a leader. Many people believe the Antichrist. So we see this theme played out time and time again, right? Not just in this public ritual of the 33, but in all these other shows. And this is just one representation. It's just one symbol that I'm covering. Many of you know from my channel there's a lot of other symbols out there that cover a lot of the same topics, a lot of the same subject matter. So we're constantly being inundated with this idea, whether we realize it or not. I believe that's one of the meanings as well, is that this coming Antichrist figure, whoever this leader is going to be, he's going to have to go through the rebirthing first. There's going to have to be fire first, right? There's going to be some kind of massive destruction first, and then this leader, this Antichrist, he will arise. This phoenix will arise from the ashes, and then that will be our new world order in the world. That will be the fifth age, the end of time. Because again, remember that the phoenix bird symbolizes immortality and resurrection, and the coming Antichrist, many people believe. The Chile mining disaster and the phoenix rescue of the 33 was all orchestrated. It was a cult ritual, and it was a scheduled event to celebrate and announce to the International Masonic Brotherhood the rise of Lucifer, or the rise of these Luciferian ideals. There was even more obvious symbolism. The Chilean flag, of course, displays a single five-pointed star. Some people may say a pentagram, right, if that's upside down. But the pentagram was actually stamped on the rescue capsule itself. So a giant pentagram was also draped in front of the underground camera. So when the miners stepped out of the risen capsule, they were wearing a large pentagram on their chest. Mario Gomez, who is the 9th miner to be rescued, wore an upside-down pentagram. So what was the significance of the upside-down pentagram? Of course, it represents Satan and the world of matter ruling over God. So Gomez, an ex-merchant marine, was chosen as the spiritual leader, quote-unquote, of the miners, who actually nicknamed him the Navigator. When Gomez emerged from the rescue capsule, he dropped to the ground in prayer. Another part of the coding during this ritual as it was taking place is the number 13. And the number 13 is sacred to the practicing occultist because it represents the highest level of man's opposition to God's authority, replacing the old world order with the Luciferian new world order as the ultimate victory in their eyes. So 13 is the number of death and resurrection, and it's also known as, that's right, the Phoenix Rising. And the 33rd and last miner was lifted out of the mine on October 13th, and the rescue capsule was 13 feet tall. And that about wraps up this video. I just wanted to show you some examples, and I know that at times the information's all over the place, yet we find these common threads, because that's really what we're dealing with. I mean, this stuff is deep. This stuff's really heavy. A lot of the stuff these occultists are trying to put forth and put out there is pretty wild stuff. But as I said earlier, we're living in a time where we have access to this knowledge now too, okay? Everybody's got access to it. It's all coming out, and it's a good thing, because knowledge is power, and we're beginning more and more to realize just who and what it is that we're dealing with. And this, to me, connecting, of course, with the Friday the 13th attacks, the 33, all the numerology, is a classic example of a public Illuminati ritual, something played out before our very eyes, yet so few people are going to see. So thanks for checking out the video. Stay aware out there, take care, and I'll talk to you real soon.